Hi, this is the Cancer Liberation Project podcast. If you've been touched by cancer and have some fear around remaining healthy, you are in the right place. As a 20-year-plus cancer survivor, Haley knows how unsettling it can be to not only hear the words, "you have cancer," but also the uncertainty and fear that comes when you have been declared cancer-free. The Cancer Liberation Project was born out of Haley's desire to make cancer less scary for people, to give people hope that they can not only heal from cancer, but live their best, most vibrant life after cancer. Get ready to be inspired with your host, Haley Dubin.
Hi, and welcome to the Cancer Liberation Project. Today, I sit down with Avinoam Lerner. Avinoam is a cancer and trauma recovery coach, clinical hypnotherapist, author of The New Cancer Paradigm, and TEDx speaker based in Boston, Massachusetts. During his 23 years in practice, he has been helping people facing cancer increase their odds of full recovery, and people living with significant trauma prevent trauma from taking hold of their body in the form of illness, addiction, and other destructive behaviors. I look forward to sharing my conversation with Avinoam. But before I do, just a couple things to mention. First, a reminder to head over to my website at revivewellness.com to get your free 7 top tips to keep cancer away and feel confident in your body again. That's REVIVE wellness.com. And second, I want to take a moment to thank the Karlfeldt Center, who makes the show possible. Hi, Avinoam. Welcome to the Cancer Liberation Project. I'm so looking forward to our conversation today.
It's good to be with you, Haley. Thank you.
First, I would just love you to share what led you to do the work you're doing.
So it all started when I was 6 years old. How often do you hear that? But I'm originally from Israel, and this region is rich with conflicts and trauma as such. And as and I lived in a very small community we call a kibbutz, which is kind of a utopian community that of a few hundred people that come together to share a different lifestyle, a more communal lifestyle. And as a kid, we were all cared for by one person while everyone else did their duties around the kibbutz. And when I was 6 years old, the Yom Kippur War, one of the wars, started, and many of the men were called into war. And we would go down with our caretaker to the gate of the kibbutz to welcome the men back as they returned. And most of them did. One particular day, which comes to mind, one didn't. And, 6 years old, I didn't understand what that meant at all. But what I witnessed back then was the wife of this particular man receiving the news and breaking down in a way that I couldn't fathom. I couldn't contain. Something terrible has happened, and there was nothing I can do about it. I was only 6 years old, but that thought really kind of coursed through me, and I remember I just want to reach out and make it all better. Given the fact that I was 6 years old, there was very little that I could have done at the time. But what really remained with me, what got burned into my mind, was the look in that woman's eyes. And it was the look of loss, of helplessness and hopelessness. Something was taken that I couldn't comprehend. I mean, I only could, many years later, interpret that look, because many years later, when I completed my education in holistic health, holistic therapy, again in Israel, I worked with 2 unique groups of people with specific emotional needs. One were Holocaust survivors, and the other was terminally ill cancer patients. And what I was struck by is the look in the terminal cancer patient's eyes was very similar to the look I've seen all those years ago. The look of loss and helplessness of something that was taken from them. But I was no longer 6 years old. I could certainly have done something because I just completed my education. And so right there and then it clicked for me. And since then, I haven't looked back. I've been working with cancer patients and people living with significant trauma. And we will talk about the approach, but you will see that it's different in that respect, that it's more goal-oriented and result-driven and structured with a very defined beginning, middle, and end. So there's no mysticism. We really dive into the inner landscape of a person, of a person's mind, to address the wounds that were buried in that blood-soaked soil. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that sounds just so amazing. When you were so young, but you were empathetic, and look where it led you. So kudos to you. That's just amazing. And, I love the fact that you are saying it's results oriented, because I know you recently listened to a podcast I just did with Raj, and, it's very hard to address the emotional aspect of cancer. I know with my clients, they don't often want to go there, and it becomes difficult for someone like me to get down to the core wound and figure out, what is really stopping them, what is making them paralyzed by fear and all that.
Yeah.
But I first wanted to ask you, why do you think illness like cancer is so prevalent, and what do you think cancer is here to teach us?
So in my book, The New Cancer Paradigm, because one of the most common questions that people ask is, why me? Right? I mean, that's just a very natural, very appropriate question. Why me? I mean, it wasn't here until now. Now it's what has changed? Why me and why now? I think illness is a call to action. From my perspective, illness is a call to action and a call for us to begin to live more authentically and more aligned with our true core values. We grew up in a world, we came into this world, we were raised by people that, for the most part, loved us and wanted the best for us. But what we have been handed down in terms of ideas and thoughts and perceptions and beliefs, many of them are other people ideas, thoughts, and beliefs and perceptions, and not necessarily ours. So we have kind of had to accept someone else's truth, reality, and knowledge. And we never really were called, or never really had the opportunity to question that properly. So many of us live as adults with very outdated mental paradigms. That's why the book is called The New Cancer Paradigm, because our mental paradigms are often constructed when we were very young, during our formative years, and we didn't have the capacity, because our faculties were not yet fully developed. We didn't have the capacity to look at things as they truly are, but rather we accepted them as our caretakers, those people who cared for us and raised us, perceive them. And if it was an issue, you just have to look at politics, for example, the political landscape, and you will see that people that were raised in a certain party's home will more often than not will continue to vote for that particular party. It's not necessarily that, obviously more and more people have access to information and to question that, but for many years, if you were of one party, then your household, that's how people vote. And so it's very hard for us to break free from these old mental paradigms that we were given, because there's an emotional attachment that locks us into this inner experience, beliefs, perceptions. Yeah.
And that's really our subconscious beliefs, right?
That's where it is. Yes. So when you ask what illness has come to do, illness has come to really force us to shut down, slow down, and focus inward in a way that we were never forced to do before. Most of us, when we have aches and pains, we take a certain pill, or we a certain medicine, or we apply quick fixes. But if illness is a call to action and a call for us to begin to live more authentically, chemistry is not the solution, or chemistry isn't the path. It's a vehicle, and so some people, and I want to be very clear about that, some people were born in a certain way, that there are deficiencies and then they need certain supplements or medications to remedy that, absolutely. But if we have something going on, just shutting down our sensory capacity so that we're no longer receiving that signal from the brain or from the mind that something is calling for our attention, we will kind of let it continue on and on and on until it becomes a chronic condition and until it festers into something more sinister, such as illness, and illness such as cancer.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, so you really believe that this is the missing piece in cancer healing and recovery, right? Because you can do all these other things. The doctor does chemotherapy, surgery, radiation, and all that. And unfortunately, it sometimes works, but there's also recurrences. So how important do you think this mental piece is to address?
I think it's extremely important. And my approach is very realistic. We have to treat cancer where the crisis is visible, and that is the physical body. I'm all for medical treatment. Medical treatment, and I want to be very clear about this, medical treatment saves lives. Absolutely. But it's not the whole healing equation. The healing equation is multidimensional because illness is multidimensional. We are multidimensional. In other words, illness certainly impacts us physically, but as someone who had cancer, you know that it impacts us mentally, emotionally, physically, and sometimes even spiritually. And we have to address all these different realms because, and I love that your previous guest, Raj, brought up Viktor Frankl, because Viktor Frankl, he was the father of logotherapy, which is a subsect of psychotherapy. Long story short, I use some of his models, visual models, to explain the problem with looking at a multidimensional event such as illness through a singular lens, whether it's the lens of medicine, which give us information about cells dividing in the body and other biological processes, or whether it's the lens of psychosocial studies that give us information about what's going on in a person's life in general from a psychosocial perspective. But if you look at a object like a can of soda, so you will have one dimension is the height and the width. If you flip it on its side, you will see that it has a top and bottom. You can, if you look at the shadow of it, holding it in the sun, and the shadow is depicted on the ground, you will see a rectangle, or you will see a circle, depends on how you hold it. But none of these depictions will tell you that this is an open vessel. In other words, a can of soda is open from the top or has an opening at the top, meaning one piece of information, height and width, has to do with the lens of science or medicine. The other dimension, the circumference, will show you the psychosocial element, and then the volume within is the mind. So that's a very long story, a very long way to demonstrate that the mind is just a very important piece of the healing equation. The point is that if you only address one part of the healing equation, that is the physical body, you will only get partial results, hence recurrences.
So what are some actions people can take to work with these subconscious beliefs that I believe we get from the minute we're conceived, correct? Till we're about 7, is that right?
Well, the subconscious mind is always omnipresent. Our mind begins to form in conception, and it begins to gather information even when we are in in a womb, but it doesn't have information enough or enough information to interpret, for example, sounds into words or meaning and so forth. But it's just collect information. And later on, when we grow up, we automatically turn these signals into information that the mind generates through the brain into the physical body as an experienced vibration. So stress is one frequency, love is a whole different frequency. And both can be generated in the next second if you know how to do that. But first, how do people address the subconscious mind? I want to point out that most of us are familiar with talk therapy. Talk therapy is important, but it's not designed to address the subconscious mind. The word talk therapy, or most form of mainstream therapy, address the conscious part of the mind. Hence, talk therapy. The conscious part of the mind is logical, rational. It's the educated mind. If I asked you, what do you think about one particular subject, you'll give me a thought process. That's where, but it's not where your knowledge resides. So we have the conscious mind, which is logical and rational, and then we have the subconscious mind, which is emotional. It's a goal-achieving agency. The analogy that I like to give is of a bank that has a vault, and the vault has all the gold. In front of the vault, there is a guard. That guard is likened to the conscious mind. If you have the right credentials, it will let you in. If you don't have the right credentials, it will send you away. So if I told you that the ocean is not actually blue, but is actually, I don't know, yellow. If where you come from, the ocean is blue, your conscious mind have heard my suggestion and ran into the vault, opened the folder of colors of nature, and ocean register as blue. And the conscious mind will say, no, that's not what I know to be true. So you don't have any access. We have to bypass the conscious mind in order to get to the subconscious mind, where the information is, so that we can revise and edit and cleanse and re-edit or insert new information. And that's essentially why talk therapy, from my perspective, and I'm not putting talk therapy down in any way, that's why, from my perspective, is it's not really designed to promote deep change. So again, I like analogies. If you're driving, then talk therapy is like wiping the windshield clean. It's important. I live in Boston. Boston has potholes all around. So it's important for you to see the road in the best way possible. But if your engine is leaking, wiping the windshield clean is just not going to do the job. You have to pull the car to the side, you have to lift the hood, and you have to look into the engine block to find the faulty part and replace it. And that's exactly what I do day in and day out. It's kind of an intervention. And then we can go into talk therapy to process that and unfold what has came up. But we have to address the issue where it resides. If it's an emotional issue, such as trauma, the nature of trauma is emotional, we have to address it within the realm of the emotional mind.
And what are some of the ways to get into the subconscious mind and do this to, because people are so fearful of cancer. They get that diagnosis and they think about, what their doctors are telling them, and you have to do this, this, and this. And they might have seen a parent suffer or somebody else, and they're paralyzed by fear. So I would love to hear how you work with someone to help them with that.
Of course. So the words that you've said, fear, right? Emotions, strong emotions. Many people have seen movies, have known about someone in their lives that had a particular experience with cancer or passed away from cancer. And it was very true, or more true in the past. More people are surviving their cancer today than any other time in history. It's important to say that, thanks to medical treatment. But as I said, it's not the whole solution. So how do you address the subconscious mind? There are different therapeutic tools. Specifically, the tool that I'm working with is clinical hypnotherapy. And hypnotherapy has been accepted as a viable medical intervention in the United States back in 1958 by the American Psychiatric Association. The challenge arises when people, again, based on their knowledge, try to figure out, so what is hypnosis? Because most of us either seen some Hollywood movies that depict it in a particular way that resemble mind control and people doing all kind of, you're not in control, and that terrifies people. And then many people have seen this semi-entertaining high school show, where people were made to do silly things, and no one wants to be perceived as such, and, God forbid, gullible or anything. So there are a lot of misconceptions around it that have nothing to do with the practice itself. So hypnotherapy is the use, or the therapeutic use of hypnosis is hypnotherapy, right? We're using it for therapeutic purposes, for healing. And that is a very different process altogether. So that particular tool, I have found it to be the most effective tool to get right into the subconscious mind, to make these adjustments, corrections, and free a person from their previous, or let's say, erroneous perceptions. And I know you interviewed Dr. Lipton, erroneous perceptions and beliefs, and genes are not our destiny. It's exactly the same thing.
Exactly.
How do we do that? We get to where the problem is. So why is the subconscious mind so incredibly important? It's important because it's the part of our mind that governs many of our bodily functions. If you think about your digestion or your heartbeat or your body temperature, we don't consciously control them.
Right.
The subconscious mind is also the part of the mind that influence or has influence over the functioning of our immune system, for example. So when we talk about cancer, we talk about immune downregulation. We talk about bringing the immune system to function at an optimal level, because it's an autoimmune issue. And so we want to make sure that our immune system works at full capacity. If we were not born with cancer, that means that, and we have the research to back this up, and we'll talk about this piece of research called psychoneuroimmunology. But if you were not born with cancer, then over time, your mental environment, and again, Dr. Lipton is talking about it very frequently, how what the Human Genome Project have made clear is that it's not that we have one gene per one illness. It is that a combination of genes get turned on or turned off, and the expression of them is this condition or that condition. And when they decided to go even further and examine, so what turns genes on and off, they discovered that it's their inner environment, right? Mental inner environment. So if you live under chronic stress, you will have certain gene expression that over time will tip the scale. If you have lived with trauma for a significant period of time, and that trauma is extremely limiting and debilitating, or just limiting in general, over time, there will be an accumulative effect. And we become, or these mental patterns that research have shown to suppress the functioning of our immune system, they, over time, weigh heavier and heavier on the functioning of our immune system. If you think about a barrel outside your door to collect raindrop, it might take 1 season, 10 seasons, 50 seasons. It doesn't matter. If that barrel is not drained, then it will eventually overflow. And that's when illness becomes visible, express itself physically.
Right. So it just reminded me, all of a sudden I'm hearing several people I know having panic attacks where they can't breathe or they're having trouble breathing. Now, is that something that's coming from subconscious, or is that the conscious?
So absolutely from the subconscious, but it's very interesting what happens with anxiety. So unlike depression, which is a chronic condition, right? There's something organically, I would say, happening in the brain. Anxiety is a learned behavior. A panic attack is an anxiety on steroids. We become, so something, we get triggered by something on the outside, and that trigger thoughts, feelings, and physical experience. That physical experience becomes the inner stimuli, because now our heart is racing and we're sweating and we are short of breath. And now we become very involved in our own inner experience of something is really happening within me, something is wrong. And we turn the volume on that. And, we're all prone to anxiety. It's just that most of us have, it's like a highway with different exits. Some of us see the exits and some of us don't see it, and they just speed. But if you want to resolve a panic attack, which is, again, the expression of anxiety, and anxiety is a pattern of control, you have to go into the subconscious mind and figure out, first of all, when this has started. And the mind will tell you right away. I can go into the process itself, but if you ask the mind to take you while you're in that inner state of hypnosis, if you ask the mind to take you to the first scene, situation, or event that has everything to do with this experience of anxiety, it will take you there just like that. And it's quite remarkable to realize that everything that ever happened to us is recorded and stored within our mind, within our body. Every cell in our body is a memory cell in a way. So when you have an experience, when you're getting triggered or re-traumatized, your whole body reacts. It's not that something isolated happened. Your whole body is activated. That's because your whole body remembers exactly how that felt back then and there. So the process itself is quite I love talking about it. I love geeking about it, but I think it's a little boring. The point is that there are protocols within the hypnotic practices. I practice specifically a protocol called regression to cause.
Okay.
And so essentially what happens is that we become fully immersed through an induction, a hypnotic induction, helps the client get involved inwardly. Right? So most of us, when we're on a day-to-day experience, we're just engaged with the outside. If you have done a meditation, you know that you shut down your senses and you are moving inward, whether you focus on your breath or some mantra or anything else, you're kind of shifting your focus or your focal point from the outside to the inside. With hypnosis, we go a little further. Hypnotherapy is very goal-oriented. So we are going into a specific state, which we call the hypnotic state, where you become fully immersed in your inner experience. It's very natural for us to do that. We do that when we are watching a good movie, for example, and we get so involved in the plot of the movie to the point that we feel what other people are feeling. That's why I don't watch horror movies, because it never...
Me either.
Yeah, because you feel it, right? You feel it throughout your body. The fear, if the actors are good and they convey the terror that they're feeling, we will, there's some rapport there that just, we feel it in every cell in our body. And for me, it's unpleasant. Some people love it.
Right.
But that state, when we become fully immersed, focused, essentially hypnosis is a state of focused attention. That's what it is. So when we become focused in our inner experience, our inner experience becomes more real than the outer experience. And that level of immersion, it's really what builds a bridge between the present moment and the past. So back then and there feels as if it's right here and right now, which is why you can affect change. You can't change the past, but you can change the meaning that you have assigned to past events. And that's really what's at the core of this.
Yeah, it's so interesting.
The tumor is only a symptom of cancer, not the cause. Hello, I'm Dr. Michael Karlfeldt. I'm the owner of the Karlfeldt Center in Meridian, Idaho. We specialize in cutting-edge integrative oncology care, addressing the cause and not just the symptom of cancer. There are 11 factors you need to address when diagnosed with cancer. To learn more of what they are, get my free ebook when you visit thekarlfeldtcenter.com. Along with the ebook, I will email you a free webinar series where world-renowned specialists will tell you what you need to do to address these 11 factors. You'll hear from experts like Jane McClellan, Dr. Paul Anderson, Dr. Neil McKinney, Dr. William Lee, Dr. Nasha Winters, and Dr. Isaac Elias. Don't miss out on this life-saving information. I also offer a free 15-minute cancer consult where we can go over where you are at in your cancer journey and how the cutting-edge therapies we offer can benefit you. Give the Karlfeldt Center call at 208-338-8902 or visit our website at thekarlfeldtcenter.com.
You were saying before that the person will go back and say what the issue was. Is that something they remember, or is you as the practitioner tells them what they came up with?
Very good question. So hypnosis has nothing to do with remembering. So here is what I mean, because it's more about revivification of that experience. Many moments that clients regress to have happened in very early years of their lives, sometimes right after birth. And, there's no possible way to consciously remember what that was like. But we can revive the experience. We can re-experience that moment. And it's almost like, you remember in Mary Poppins, the old movie, when they jumped into the drawing on the sidewalk that Bert did, and they kind of walked into this inner world, right, into this magical world. And it's very similar. We can open up a glimpse into a full experience, and it's not like stepping into a movie, and but it becomes, we use our senses in the fullest capacity, so we can sense how we felt and what we heard and everything else about that moment. It's rich information. It's like a picture is worth 1,000 words, right? So there's so much information encoded into a mental image. But I want you to understand, the language of the conscious mind is different from the language of the subconscious mind. So many people say, well, how do you know that we are in the subconscious mind? Well, the language is different. So again, if I asked you about, what do you think about the ocean, you'll give me a thought process. But and that's the language of the conscious mind. But the language of the subconscious mind is automatic. It's associations. Or they just pop into your mind. So if I said the word clouds, what came to mind?
Right. White, puffy.
Yeah. And you don't have to manufacture that. You don't have to, there's no effort involved in that. There's no comprehension. It's just, oh, it's there. If I said the word dog, something else would pop into your mind. So associations, we don't manufacture them. They're like pieces of a jigsaw puzzle that we put together to create a mental image. And sometimes the question is simple. So in a moment, as I count from 10 down to number 1, your mind will take you to the very, all the way back to that very first scene, situation, or event that has everything to do with this experience. And on the count of 1, there you are. Is it daytime or nighttime? They give me an answer. Are you alone or with people? They give me an answer. Is it inside or outdoors? They give me an answer. And all these questions are intended to kind of breathe life into, bring it to the surface. And then we just explore what's there. Now, you said something at the beginning, very true. Most people are terrified of feeling those feelings again.
Yes.
But that's because back then and there, first of all, they were young. So these emotions seemed very big, but they were also alone in that experience. Working with a clinical hypnotherapist like myself, we are there shoulder to shoulder. You don't have to go through it alone. Even more than that, because you already know you survived that moment, however difficult that moment was, it's not going to be as charged as before. So there are ways to find where you store in your body all that pain, all that tension. There are pockets of festering emotions that calcified over the many years of our lives. And we have to, and your body will know. I'll ask you, where do you feel it in your body? You will say, here and there. Okay, and then we have to mechanically move that energy. So this is where mind becomes integrated with body in a very effective way. We usually I have one of those big pillows that we put on the lap, and we literally move that energy mechanically. We move that stuffed or festering energy out of our body. We're exhausting it. We're cleansing it out of the body into that pillow. We beat the hell out of it, if that's your thing, or we squeeze it out of our system, and that help us let the steam out, if you will. We get to release the intensity of the traumatic moment. The pain is getting released. Now that is necessary because when we are in the realm of trauma, it's like driving through fog. You can't see really that far ahead of you. So most people that are living with trauma, they've normalized their trauma, they normalized their pain, they trivialized their suffering, and they're just kind of walking, getting through life. But it's like walking in mud because it's every step requires so much more effort.
Yeah. I'm curious, how many sessions does it take? I know everyone's so different, but typically to see results.
So it's part of why this program works. And again, we're talking about the Rapid Trauma Solution. And the Rapid Trauma Solution is a 15-hour program where the first day, the first 7.5 hours, so half of that time, are condensed into one single day. I get to work with one person for 7.5 hours straight. We go very deep down the rabbit hole and clear a great deal of mental ground. And so when will they feel change? On day one. On day one, because there's no mysticism here. There's just a very structured process with a very defined beginning, middle, and end, and therapeutic intersections that we need to cross successfully before we move on to the next one. And we know where we are along the process, and it just needs to get done. And when someone says, well, I know I need to do this, but I don't know how, this is the most effective way I have learned to do this. So essentially 15 hours are divided into 3 days. The first day is 7.5 hours. The second day is a 4-hour day, and the last day is 3.5 hours day. And the reason we do that this way is because first day, we create a massive change in attitude. So we clear the mind from that mental trauma. The second day and the third day, we're doing a lot of testing to make sure that we addressed all the triggers associated. And we also establish or work to establish change in behavior. So we know through research that if we only have change in attitude, but we don't have change in behavior as well, over time, there will be some diminishing effect. And we want to prevent that from happening, specifically if we work with cancer to clear the traumas. We want to make sure that we've addressed what we've addressed, and it doesn't express itself in any other way. So testing is incredibly important. The point is to get it done. 15 hours have proven to be a very solid period of time where majority of people get tremendous results. And again, you can do everything right. And this is an important point to make. You can have all the right doctors and treatments and supplements and everything in between. But if your mind has not been addressed, it will continue to call for the terminology that I use is self-mutilation, right? When the body turns on itself. And cancer is a self-mutilation protocol. It's not a very pleasant term, but we are here to do something significant. And we have to excavate whatever, dredge out whatever, or uproot whatever is there that is pulsating and sending that call for the body to turn on itself.
Right.
And that has to be there's this joke about the dentist that someone sat on in the chair, and within 5 minutes they pull their tooth out and $500, and the person says, $500 for 5 minutes. And the dentist says, I can take a lot longer. Right? I mean, it's just how long do you want to suffer? So I don't believe in suffering. I think we just have a lot too much of that.
Exactly.
And so I really want to get it done as soon as possible. Life in Israel are lived by the second hand of the clock. We don't have time to spend endless years in therapy.
Right.
So this is just a very effective, goal-oriented way to get it done.
Love it. It's so important. I'd love you to just talk about a client and maybe what they went in for and how their life was improved afterwards.
Sure. So this process is ultimately freeing. Most people come either because, they struggled with certain patterns for years. That's trauma, or they've done therapy and, they've spent years in therapy, but that didn't move the needle that much. Yes, sometimes it helped them feel better, helped them grow, and helped them address certain aspects of their experience, but it didn't scratch that inner itch. It didn't change their self-concept, their understanding of who they are. And that's where the challenge is, because we grow up in a world that is extremely demanding. We learn from other people that certain parts of us are not appropriate or undesired, or whatever you want to call, our inner experience. And so we are insecure. We have a distorted self-image. We are unintentionally letting many of these of other people ideas about how life should be hold us back from being our fullest self. Many of us, and many of my clients are women, many of them talk about the fact that they were told that they're too much, right? And so what does that mean? And then you have men that struggle with other things. And so we have to shake it off somehow. There's this story about the fly that is trying to push through the window pane to the outside, right? And you can only, that fly is locked into the belief that pushing harder through the window pane will somehow get it to freedom. But that very belief will be the end of that fly, because it will eventually spend all its life energy and it will die. So and by the way, the door to the left, 3 feet away, is wide open. Mm-hmm. Most of us don't even know we live in this inner prison of experience. We just call it shame or guilt or anger or rage or trauma or whatever. But so most of the people, when they come to arrive at my office, they have been through some inner work processes. They tried therapy and Raj talked about internal family system and so forth. These are great tools. But if you don't get results, that means that you have to dig beneath the surface of your consciousness. And then tools like clinical hypnotherapy might be very appropriate. I can tell you about many clients that came in believing that they're truly defective and broken and undesired, and that what they were told about themselves was true. And in fact, it really wasn't the reality, wasn't the truth. It was their perceived truth, right? So I live in Boston. I use the analogy of baseball because that's resonates with people here. But we grow up in life like looking through a hole in a fence, looking at a baseball game through a hole in a fence. And so we're only going to be able to see a sliver of the field. We're not going to be able to see what's before and after, but we're going to make up the story because we have to make sense of the game. And that's what most of us have done throughout life, which means we have a distorted image of who we are.
Right.
So when a client comes, they usually come because they tried to get relief for many years and didn't get it, or they just been diagnosed with cancer and they say, look, there's more to healing than what happens, than poking my body. I know that there's something going on. I knew it for years. I just was, I put it off, and I know I can't afford to do that anymore. So I'm here. Let's get it done.
Yeah.
In every case, the first day, which is the marathon day, if you will, is extremely momentous. We go back in time to events that have literally shaped who we are. And we change the meaning that we have assigned from limiting and destructive and painful to enhancing and positive and uplifting. And one way to explain that is, for example, I use the example of food and eating because it's not threatening to anyone. But if you grew up in a normal home, you heard that statement that you better finish the food off your plate because there's kids hungry in whatever country of the time. Have you heard that?
Yes.
Yeah. So it's a very interesting statement because when we were kids, most of us didn't travel. So we don't really know what another country is. Like, is it across the street? We just don't have that concept firmly embedded into us. And if we never starved, we don't know what hunger is. I mean, is it missing snack or what is it? So most of us don't necessarily hear what the adult is trying to say. And the adult is trying to teach us that, look, not everybody have food. So we're very fortunate.
Finish your plate, right?
Yeah. So that's what the adult is saying. But the child, if that child hasn't traveled and doesn't and was never starving, can only hear the subtext. And the subtext is, if you do as I tell you, which is finish the food off your plate, I will love you more. And everything we do in life, I'm not the first one to say it, everything we do in life is either to get more love or compensate for the lack of love. You can take that to the bank. It's a yardstick that never fails. So, of course, as kids, our life depends on our caretakers. We want to, we want to do what we are told, because that means security and safety. So we grow up to be very, we create these associations. We lock into certain associations between food and conditional love. And many people develop patterns around food and eating, or eating habits that are not very healthy because of that.
Right.
So in the context of this work, if somebody came in to resolve this pattern, we will use this protocol, the regression protocol, to go back in time to the very first time they ever heard that statement. And then the adult us, the adult you, will have a conversation with that younger version of you. That younger version is holding the perceived truth, and you're going to give it or offer it the absolute truth, which is what the adult was trying to say, right? So there's an exchange of meaning, right? The absolute truth will override the perceived truth, and that chain of association will be broken, and you will have your freedom.
And is this something when you wake up from, I don't know if you say it's a trance or what it is exactly, you remember all this or you don't remember it?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes, you emerge from hypnosis. You emerge. So in hypnosis, there are 6 levels of depth. Most schools will agree to that. The first level is what we call awake hypnosis. We're all in hypnosis, right? We're all responding to suggestions. If a friend of yours told you that there's a great restaurant to try, it's a suggestion, right? And if we act upon it, we acted on a suggestion. That's what hypnosis is. We are more susceptible or more open to suggestions. So level 1 is awake hypnosis. Level 2 and 3 are just below the surface, what we call somnambulism. It's the surface of trance state. In these 2 states, you can hear everything, remember everything, respond in your own voice, and get a full effect. 3 and down, you're kind of out, and there's no healing value to it whatsoever. It's valuable if you go to the dentist and Novocaine hasn't been effective with you. If you don't want to feel the pain, you can use that kind of a coma state, if you want to call it that. But it has no added value in terms of healing.
And you mentioned psychoneuroimmunology.
Yes.
Is there anything else you wanted to say about that, or?
Sure. Very quickly, psychoneuroimmunology is a field of scientific study that has been with us since the early 70s, started at the University of Rochester in New York. They, by accident, they worked with rodents, with rats, and they wanted to give them a drug that will give them a belly ache, and then remove the drug and see if the bellyache could be conditioned, just like Pavlov's dogs with the bells and the salivation. So they wanted to repeat that just with rats. And it worked, only that the rats began to die. And they said, well, what's going on here? The bellyache drug doesn't have any nothing here. So they went back to the drawing board, and they realized that the bellyache drug has immune suppressant components. And they discovered that, oh my God, the immune system can be conditioned. So that's the psychoneuroimmunology is the holy grail for any body-mind practice. If people would care to understand what this research indicates, that there are certain mental and psychological patterns that are suppressing or weighing heavy on the functioning of our immune system. These patterns are stress, helplessness, and hopelessness, just to name a few, but I can add trauma, rage, and grief over deprivation. There's a whole host of them that I've seen at work. But psychoneuroimmunology is really the scientific backdrop to the methodology that I developed working with cancer patients and people, by the way, that want to utilize it as a preventative approach, right? People are okay now, they're healthy, but they're saying, look, stuff happened in my life. I don't want to carry this for until something happens. I want to be done with that. So this is what we do.
Perfect. I just think it is so, so important. And I'm so glad that you spoke about this and that you're on the show. We're going to get into random round. I might just do just a few of the questions just because it's running a little long.
Sure.
But first, fill in the blank.
Mm-hmm.
Freedom to you is?
So freedom is a state of inner alignment for me. And what I mean by that is when I feel that my soul is in the right place, in the right time, and I'm doing the right thing, there's an inner state of alignment that resonates with joy. And I can have it whether I'm on the subway, I can have it when I'm with my daughters, I can have it when it doesn't matter. It's an inner state of experience. And I strive to get there as often as I can.
I love that. Love that. I was just thinking about my dad who passed away recently and unexpectedly. And I keep thinking to myself, like, how do I get that joy back? And obviously that's part of grief, but listening to you, it's like, okay, I can do this. I can do this.
My recommendation on that, if I may, would just be to shift your focus from the moment of departure to his life legacy that keeps on living with you and in you and within your family. So it's a tiny little shift, but extremely meaningful.
That's beautiful. Thank you.
Sure.
When you are feeling afraid, what do you do?
I love emotional freedom technique. For those of you who are not familiar with it, find a resource. It is such a practical and effective and easy to learn and easy to apply method to just hack into our nervous system, right? The methodology is just like noise cancellation technology for me. It's just very effective. We don't have the time to go into that, but I teach it to every one of my clients. And I have a course on my website for people that might be interested. It's just such a fantastic way to get relief. Tap on anything. Yes.
Yeah, I love that. And yeah, I think for people who are in that state of fight or flight, it's just such a good practice.
It takes you from the mind to the body because you immediately, you get into action and you don't stay in your mind. It's not just in the realm of thoughts and you get to integrate it into the body and release it through the body.
Right. What is one simple thing that brings you joy?
That's an unfair question because there's so many, but my daughters, I have two teenage daughters, and yeah, I'm smitten. So it's just knowing that they're in, that I've been fortunate enough to have that in my life is everything.
Great. And last, where can people find you if they want to learn more?
Sure. So my website is my full name, avinoamlerner.com. And I'm in Boston. Look, I've been doing this for many years, written books and done presentations and TEDx and just plug my name online and you will certainly reach me. There are actually two Avinoam learners in the United States. One of them is a very big shot Hollywood producer. That's not me. Yes, I'm the other one.
Got it. That's perfect. I didn't even know that. I did not know that.
I get a call every now and then with people trying to pitch me a script and they dive right into it. And I have to, I'm so sorry. That sounds fantastic, but that's not me.
Oh, funny. Well, Avinoam, thank you so much. This was such an important conversation. And I know people are going to want to reach out to you and want to deal with the emotional stress that happens when you have a cancer diagnosis. So, and also, it's a traumatic experience just having cancer, even though many people have trauma beforehand. The whole experience is traumatic for people. So I think your work is so important. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having me. I want people to know that there is a lot that they can do. That's all.
Wonderful. That's it for today's episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed this podcast, please rate, review, and subscribe. Doing so will really help this podcast get noticed and will help us to inspire more people. And remember, the sky is the limit when you take your power back when it comes to your health.